welcome to another edition of Chequamegon Chat. It's been a little while, but now we're back. My name is Jason. You may see me online at the Facebook site at Marching Through History.
I'm Walter Gurske with Hear Myself Talk History, also online, for the two of you that actually watch this.
We're here. We're going to just talk about the last time we actually did a Chequamegon Chat. I think was actually when we were previewing what we were going to do today. And it was our 80th anniversary D-Day project that we did here at the Chequamegon Veterans Center on the 6th of June, which quite a few of you, I think we had 75 people show up, standing room only at the Chequamegon Veterans Center, and then for every you who's watched it online, how did we come about the genesis of this D-Day project?
Well, so honestly, the program kind of started in the immediate aftermath of our George Barr presentation, because that, of course, was quite successful. And I know we were discussing about some follow-ups that we could do. And I had brought up that my grandfather had served in Operation Overlord, and as a local connection to that, so we talked about doing a program on D-Day and potentially trying to find some more of these local stories that we could throw into this, so we could tie these small stories into this massive global event. And everything just kind of went from there.
Yes, we did. We did have connections to some local families. Did a few oral histories, some of which are up online. Some more that may be coming up online, and which was exciting. It was exciting to actually talk to some of these local families, look at some of the pictures they had, hear some of the stories they had from their family members. Unfortunately, we haven't spoken to any anyone who participated in D-Day, but I think we had a good cross representation of different types of service in D-Day.
Absolutely.
And those, but we're not going to rehash that today, because that's kind of what our program was, and that's our oral histories. Here today, we're just going to talk a little bit about the background, some of the research we did. And in one of the things that we did, which is kind of connected to the oral histories, I'm just going to throw this out there real quick, is we also did a video, which will not up yet, but it will be up in the future, where we did an interview with Major John Plaster, Special Forces veteran, local historian, and we had a very interesting discussion on sniper activities on the Western Front.
Yes. Yes, we had a very interesting video that we did with Major Plaster about sniping, as well as a little bit of touching on things like the Jedburgh Special Forces operations leading up to the operation there. And that video is coming. Had some technical issues they're entirely my fault, I'll own that. And it is coming.
And I'll let him own the technical issues, because I do absolutely zero contribution on the technical side, so I can't really mess up that side. So... but anyway, no, look for that in the future, and we hope to have Major Plaster on here again, because he is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to special operations history, the history of sniping and sharpshooting, and we hope to have him again. Hopefully he can bear with us. But one of the first field trips we took...
Actually, as a side note, just to cut in real quick, too, that I just want to mention regarding those technical difficulties is that unfortunately I actually was fired as our internal IT and camera guy, so we now have a new member of the team, Jeremy. Well, say hi.
Hi, Jeremy.
So I just want to welcome him on board the crew as well.
So hopefully our production values will increase greatly, which is good, because I'm still contributing nothing to the technological side of it. But
the amount of rapidly inflated Reich marks that we've paid him, I expect some good quality work.
Oh yes, he's definitely. If this video gets good marks, I say we double his salary.
I think we can do that.
Yes, we'll work on that. So we'll get back to you on that, Jeremy.
If we make it to 10 likes, he gets double salary.
Good. But getting back to our research trips, we actually did several research field trips on this, and the first one we did was a quick back and forth down to La Crosse last Labor Day weekend. It was actually about 10 months ago to see the LST 325. Now, what is an LST 325? Everyone is asking, right? I think they'll be asking that, right?
Oh yes.
So, what is an LST?
So that is going to be a landing ship tank. So that's going to be on the larger end of the actual landing craft that would come into the shore. This is actually a ship. It's an ocean-going vessel, but it has a door that can be opened so that it can actually discharge troops and vehicles directly onto a beach, especially in lack of actual port facilities. In many ways, they're really kind of a precursor to our modern-day assault ships.
Yeah, and they're actually and it's not just like one level. I mean, they've got the interior tank deck, then they have their upper deck. So that literally is, everyone's heard the refrain that the Higgins boat won the war. I mean, but one historian, and I'm going to credit it to Craig Simmons, who's historian emeritus at the U.S. Naval Academy, and I'm very positive, highly positive, that he said this, but he actually gave the LST more credit. So that is a ship that won the war over the Higgins boat. And I can definitely see his point, because if you think about what, because the Higgins boat, which is basically just a, is a landing craft, landing craft vehicle personnel. Yep. LCVP, landing craft vehicle and personnel, which is a famous one. You see, Saving Private Ryan, the landing scenes, those were Higgins boats. But they're smaller what they are. They come from big ships inwards. The landing ship tanks are actually ocean crossing vessels of their own. They have,
even as we saw when we were down there, and we'll have a picture put up of that as well, that LSTs actually carried and launched Higgins boats in addition to everything else. They actually just had them essentially like lifeboats would be on a commercial vessel.
But that's how we win a war. Is what did the United States bring to the war effort? Was men and material, lots of material. I mean, Sherman tanks and all these trucks hauling supplies don't just materialize on the beach. I mean, once you get that beachhead, you got to start pushing in. So all these tanks and vehicles and units are carried by landing ship tanks. So, and they're active in all theaters of the war. So that was a very educational trip that we had. We did do a video that was posted online, not really high production values, but yeah, it's essentially the LST 325 is I believe the last D-Day veteran of the LST rank still afloat.
I believe so. I do know that it is the only LST that is preserved and operational in American waters.
Yeah, and right now it's an active museum ship. It's at I want to say it's permanently docked at berth at Evansville, Indiana.
I believe so.
And that was just one of it. And it does cruises across the United States. So that's when we saw when it came up to Mississippi and La Crosse. So you can go ahead and look for them online. But that was our first research field trip. And something else that came out of that was Walter's introduction to me to Sabaton. So I actually learned to have an appreciation of Swedish heavy metal music on that trip.
Yes, you never know what you're going to learn about when you're going off on a research trip, whether it be World War II veteran landing ships or Swedish heavy metal bands that sing about World War II landings.
So anyway, so Sabaton is now a permanent fixture on my Spotify playlist. Where else did we go? We went somewhere else too. So everyone's in the springtime.
Yes,
that you brought up.
So in the springtime, we also went on a trip down to Fagen Fighters World War II Museum in Granite Falls, Minnesota. Now that actually has been mentioned by us before as being part of the inspiration actually behind the George Barr program, because I had gone down there to attend a program with Dick Cole, who was at the time the last surviving Doolittle Raider, and he has unfortunately passed away since then. But he was down there to present his Congressional Gold Medal to the museum. So that made an impression on me because it was an excellent facility. And so when we were discussing about places to go for research trips, that this would be an excellent place to go for really anything aviation related as far as the Normandy campaign is concerned, but also that there was some specifically Normandy related items there as well.
Yeah, because the founder of the museum, Ray Fagen, was a D-Day veteran. He went ashore with the 4th Infantry Division on Utah Beach. So they actually have a specific D-Day display there. They have Bradley's Jeep there.
Yes, they do.
They do. I was trying. Yeah, they do have Bradley's actual Jeep that he actually used in the Normandy invasion at that museum. But there's so many impressive things there. We'll just touch on them. This is just going to be real. But when you walk into the main gallery, one of the first things you see is a Waco glider.
Yeah.
That is, it's not 100% because they kind of have it cut in half a little bit. So
it's actually done as a cutaway, so that you can get a look at its interior and how it's actually constructed.
Gliders were very, in the European War, they were definitely used quite a lot more than you ever really hear about a lot. But just getting up close to that glider, getting to look inside, definitely gave me an appreciation for the troops that went into combat with them, because there's not much to them.
No.
I jumped out of airplanes, and if I had a choice between gliding in combat on a glider or having a parachute on my back and leaving a C-47, I'll jump every single time. So there's a lot more that we can say about the glider-borne troops. I guess I won't go down that rabbit hole, but that was one of the first things that we saw in there. Some of the other impressive things, that P-47 Thunderbolt just sticks with me.
Oh, absolutely. One of the most iconic aircraft of the European War for the United States, of course, the P-47D Thunderbolt. Just a massive aircraft. I mean, when you compare it even to the B-25 Mitchell that was there, that's a huge single-engined aircraft, excuse me. But it really does. It really strikes with you. And of course, that was such an important aircraft as a ground attack aircraft as well as a fighter, supporting the Normandy operation as well as everything else in the European theater. Very, very important aircraft that's often kind of overlooked for the more glamorous P-51.
Yeah, but it is a gigantic, and when you're standing next to it, the size of it is like, this is a single-seat, single-engine fighter. I mean, you think that they're, but beautifully restored. And the wonderful thing about Fagen is these aircraft, they are not just museum set pieces. They are working aircraft that are, and they might not all be there if you visit, because they're actually on the air show circuit. Their P-47 or their P-51, I forget the name. That was one of their first pieces that they had, was that P-51. Mm-hmm. But I do have to make a mention of two of the most iconic pieces that really excited me, that got my history nerd all excited. The one was obviously that Corsair, because my first introduction to military aviation were the Robert Conrad reruns of Black Sheep, and then reading Gregory Boyington's memoir, Bow by Black Sheep, when I was a young kid, early teenager. So that Corsair has always been vivid in my imagination. But ever since we did that Doolittle project and you introduced me to B-25 Mitchells, they have a working, fully restored B-25 Mitchell bomber there that I literally had I don't know if I was going to say nerdgasm. I don't know if I can say that. But our producer will bleep that out if I'm not supposed to say that. But I had a lot of nerd excitement there, and I could not spend enough time around that B-25.
Well, and as we'd mentioned earlier, the fact of the matter is that this aircraft too it actually does have at least a tangential connection to the Doolittle raid, because I had gone there for this program there, sat under the wing of that aircraft to listen to Dick Cole tell his story as being Doolittle's co-pilot on the raid, which was quite an experience. And then we actually were able to go down where he signed it on the bomb bay.
And that picture there with that producer will hopefully put up at this spot of the video is exactly where we found where he signed it underneath that plane. So yeah, the Fagen Fighters down in Granite Falls, Minnesota. It's look it up. If you have any interest in military, World War II history, or aviation history, you need to get to Fagen Fighters Museum. And I'm glad that because I had never heard about it until you had brought it up. Hopefully I'll get back there at some point in the future. But that wasn't our only trip. Well, you did one side trip where I unfortunately could not join you, and where our illustrious producer, you can show yourself again, producer, went with you. To the Bayfield Heritage Association.
Yeah.
So what connection does the Bayfield Heritage Association have with D-Day?
So we went up there actually because the USS Bayfield was the command ship for the Coast Guard's operations at Normandy, as well as the overall command ship for Utah Beach specifically. And so we went up there to talk a little bit about the USS Bayfield, and actually we had learned from them that they actually had the original ensign from the USS Bayfield in their collection. So we were able to get up there and see that and talk to them a little bit about the ship. And then they very generously were able to actually bring that down for our live presentation so that we were able to have that on display. And it was an honor and a privilege to be able to display that and to help to share that around. So hopefully we've set the groundwork for a beneficial partnership in the future. We very much look forward to it.
Yeah, and we're definitely, I can't say again how grateful we were that they were brought that.
Yes.
Because letting that see the light of day, letting some of the Chequamegon Bay community see that piece of actual history, that artifact, was exciting. And I will have to comment that the Bayfield Heritage Association is not the Bayfield Maritime Museum. They're both up there in Bayfield. So make sure to give them a look-see.
Yep, the Maritime Museum is going to be down there by the ferry docks, and then the Heritage Association is actually going to be right across from the Carnegie Library up there.
And like Walter said, I hope this is not our last collaboration with
Yes.
the Bayfield Heritage Association. But talking about them, I just want to bring a shout out to some of our other local resources here that we had utilized. Particularly, the state of Wisconsin has an archives on the second floor of the Great Lake Visitor Center that we had utilized greatly for the Doolittle Raid presentation. You said you got probably most of your research, or you spent a lot of time there. And I spent some time in there on other projects. Unfortunately, I didn't get to spend enough time, neither one of us did, for this project, only because of just, life, work schedule, so many things got in the way that I think we had one good afternoon out there at the archives going through local press, daily press. The intention was to have a segment of our presentation talk about like local events and things that were happening in the news. And if you were reading the daily press around the time of D-Day, these are other things that would be in the news at the time. We had just a little bit of a snapshot of that, but not as much as I had wanted because our program wasn't long enough back then. But no, a great resource if you're involved in any kind of like genealogical research or anything with local history. Don't forget about the archivists up at the Great Lakes Visitor Center and the Wisconsin Historical Society archives. Very helpful. And man, that's what they do. They're there for you. That's for our access.
Yes.
Historical Society.
Absolutely. And so, of course, we also don't want to forget our own Ashland Historical Society Museum, which, as always, been very helpful to us with just any local research, getting access to their own archives, as well as providing us with some more artifacts that we had on our displays here during that day. So, again, many thanks to them.
Yeah,
I feel like there's one more that we're forgetting.
I don't know. Let me think. No, I'm looking back on our bookshelf here at our biography of Ace of Aces, Dick Bong, because we spent an afternoon up at the Bong Veterans Historical Research Center up in Superior, which is a combination research center, archive, and museum. Its focus is on Major Dick Bong, who, as everyone should know, is the highest decorated aviator in World War II. Received the Medal of Honor for his exploits. Unfortunately died during the war on a test pilot crash. But no, we had gone up there. Their centerpiece is a P-38 Lightning, that famous twin fuselage airplane that's highly recognizable silhouette that a lot of people of a certain age have gone past on Poplar. But being that Dick Bong was a Pacific War, that P-38 definitely has a D-Day connection, which I'll have Walter share with you.
Yes, actually. So the connection there is that aircraft was very famously used to provide top cover over the beaches. And this was actually in part due to that aforementioned famous silhouette, because essentially after the disaster that had occurred during the invasion of Sicily with a large amount of friendly fire against Allied aircraft coming in from naval anti-aircraft gunners, they had taken some steps to try to prevent that, which included also the painting of the famous black and white invasion stripes. But the P-38 is a capable fighter with an excellent weapons load, And again, it has a very unique silhouette that would help hopefully to prevent that problem. And as far as a local connection specifically, one of the contingent units of the 148th Fighter Wing based out of Duluth actually did at that time operate top cover with P-38s over the Normandy beaches during the invasion.
Okay. So yeah, so we did spend some time up there. You want to mention why we were up there?
Well, I suppose.
Okay, because we had we did a we went up there to do a live TV interview related to the D-Day Project on WWII was the Lift. Not my highlight live TV, I will say. So we'll see if we ever get back on their program ever again. You did fine. I'm sorry. I was the one who kind of flubbed my lines, but Walter did fine. But
if you say so.
No, I think you did. I don't know. Live TV cameras. I remember I had the thought when I was there that I found going down an alley in Baghdad in 2003 was a lot less stressful than sitting in a chair in a TV studio looking at lights and live cameras. Because I was just like... But we got the job done. They didn't throw us out of the studio.
True.
But we'll see. Again, we'll see if they ever invite us back on for one of our future
We didn't get
events.
escorted out, so we're going to count it as a win.
Yeah, so that's what brought us up there to the Bong. And those are some of the research field trips we did. That was in addition to a lot of the the online primary source research we're doing. I don't know if there's really other research field trips we want to talk about.
Well, we just, of course, as always, we read a few books and go through some primary sources online, going through the U.S. National Archives for photographs and video especially, reading some other books like Anthony Beevor's D-Day, among others.
Oh, which I happen to have a copy of right here. Sorry, I just have it off.
But yeah, a fair amount of research went into this project, and
I would like. Could I make a shout out to two books I read that are really good?
Certainly.
Well, obviously the Beevor book is an excellent overall study of the entire D-Day campaign, and it includes not just we focused on the Americans. We segued a little bit into the British airborne landings, but Beevor covers all aspects, all the beaches and stuff like that. Two books I'm going to touch on. One book that I used is The Bedford Boys by Alex Kershaw. Alex Kershaw is a well-noted popular historian. I think he's the current historian in residence at the D-Day Museum in New Orleans.
I honestly couldn't tell you.
But he's written a lot. His Bedford Boys is about Company A of the 116th Infantry, which is part of the 29th Division going, which was part of the first wave of D-Day. Very moving book, a lot of personal stories. And he has a way of writing that really gets those stories out. Because part of our production is I touched on the experience of the 116th Infantry a little bit because of their high casualty rates. But excellent book. I think anything by Alex Kershaw you're going to find very good, especially if you like the personal stories. One of the most famous books on World War II and D-Day is Band of Brothers. Everyone's seen the HBO miniseries, an excellent miniseries. But if you've read Band of Brothers, if you've seen the miniseries, you have to find Dick Winter's memoirs. Excellent depiction of what it takes for effective combat leadership. Yes, if you read Band of Brothers, you have to get beyond Band of Brothers. It's his own story. I just had to give those little personal shout-outs to that. But that's all we wanted to do today was kind of do a little rehash, touch base on some of the things that we did, some of the travels we did to bring you some of these stories. Hopefully we have a lot coming up in the future now that we have a very capable production team supporting us. Anything else we should add?
Well, other than that, we do have some very exciting information to be coming fairly shortly about a new project that we're going to be embarking upon, so stay tuned for that. And otherwise, I think that's about it.
I think so too.
All right, well, thank you for watching.